As a film nerd, I've at times been asked who I consider to be the coolest movie character of all time, and almost immediately Indiana Jones comes to mind. But he really shouldn't. If you stop to think about it, in a world of guns and swords, using a whip as your primary weapon should not only be impractical, but kind of lame. Also, being an archaeologist and school teacher is not necessarily the coolest of professions. However, this is what makes Indiana Jones a unique and iconic protagonist. You see, he has no superpowers, he gets outmaneuvered numerous times by the bad guys, and he often relies on a bit of luck to come out on top. But the relatability of his character and the charisma that Harrison Ford brings with his performance really make Indiana Jones stand out from the crowd when it comes to popular action heroes. And the beauty of his narrative across the initial trilogy of films have made the Indiana Jones trilogy a timeless and immensely influential batch of films. Chronologically, the Indiana Jones trilogy actually functions similar to the Star Wars franchise, as they started in the middle with Raiders of the Lost Ark, then jumped to a prequel with the Temple of Doom, and then jumped forward in time a bit for The Last Crusade. And in Temple of Doom, we start with the action right away. We as the audience essentially get thrown into the third act of a different film, as Jones has already retrieved an artifact off screen, and we're at the part where he gets double-crossed. By starting the film off in this way, it really helps to establish the fact that this isn't Jones's first rodeo. He's likely found many hidden gems, been double-crossed a number of times, and has had to take others hostage before. But what we also see in this first portion of Temple of Doom is Indy's friend Wuhan get shot, and as Jones holds his dying friend, Wuhan says, "I followed you on many adventures, but into the great unknown mystery, I go first, Indy." You see, as an archaeologist, Indiana Jones is a man who seeks to find the fact within the mystical and unknown, whether that be the Dark Light or the Lost Ark. However, death is the one mystery he wants no part of. But throughout the trilogy, we see Indy court death on numerous occasions, whether it be in the name of adventure, to save someone he cares about, or to preserve history. And while he actually rarely succeeds in his initial goals, what makes Indiana Jones a great hero is the fact that he never gives up. No matter how many times someone like Belloc outmaneuvers him, no matter how many booby traps he triggers, no matter how many times he has to risk his life even. He keeps trying to attain his goal, and this drive and persistence is what makes Indiana Jones so relatable, but at the same time inspiring. As even with a friend dying in his arms, he hardens his resolve to keep charging forward. He knows the stakes of his actions and the level of risk he's taking, but in his eyes, it's worth it. Not because he wants to obtain these precious artifacts for himself, but rather so their history can live on and the power that they may possess stays out of the wrong hands. Raiders of the Lost Ark is a fascinating action film in the sense that our lead protagonist does next to nothing to actually lead to the defeat of the Nazis in the final act. In fact, many have argued that if you remove Indiana Jones from the plot entirely, nothing changes. The Nazis would still get the Ark, and they would still promptly die upon opening said Ark. But this line of thinking misses the wider concept of the trilogy as a whole. You see, this trilogy of films is analogous to life in the fact that the final destination is not what's most important. It's the journey along the way. That's the beauty of life, and that's the fun of this trilogy. Actually having the Lost Ark in his possession, or being able to use the power it beholds, is not what brings joy to Indy. It's the thrill of finding it and all the adventures that come along the way. While one could argue that these adventures are ultimately meaningless, it's the same spectacle-filled adventures that leave the audience so entertained. It's the thrill and agony of not knowing how things will turn out that gives these films stakes and is what makes life the ultimate adventure. On top of serving as a beautiful analogy for life itself, this trilogy also allows us to see Indy in a little bit of a different light in each film. In Temple of Doom, we get to see Jones as a parental figure, as he cares for Short Round as if he was his son. And we see Short Round idolizes and looks up to Jones as he mirrors him at times, and is more than happy to tag along in any adventure. Indy even frees the hundreds of abducted children from a local village during the third act of the film. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, we get to see more of Indy's romantic side, as his dynamic with Marion proves to be his most integral relationship throughout the film. She saves his life at points, he saves her life at points, they have off-screen prior history, and we see that Indy even values her life more than retrieving the Ark itself. In The Last Crusade, we get to see Indiana Jones in his adolescence at the start of the film, and then searching for and subsequently teaming up with his father for a good portion of the movie. With the addition of his father to the trilogy, we get to unpack Indy's childhood trauma a bit, and it further highlights how reckless and truly adolescent Indy is at heart in comparison to his much more uptight and by-the-books father. Getting to see our main protagonist go through these different phases of life, from being a son, to being a lover, to being a parent, further establishes the trilogy's analogous nature to life as a whole, as most people will naturally develop into and have to lead different roles at different points of time in their life. But taking on these roles doesn't mean that the adventure has to end. It's also interesting that Indy kind of progresses in these roles in reverse order, as he starts out in the parental role in the first chronological film, and then ends the trilogy in the role of a son with his father's entrance to the franchise. But I think this is intentionally done because, as is the case with life, you don't always get a say in when you'll have to fill certain roles. Life comes at you from all angles, and you simply have to answer the call and enjoy the adventure. Towards the end of The Last Crusade, we see Elsa hanging off a cliff as Indy is trying desperately to pull her back up. But she eventually falls to her death because she cannot resist the temptation of reaching for the Holy Grail. Ironically, she dies prematurely because of her lust for something that could potentially give her immortality. A few moments after Elsa's fall, Indy finds himself in the exact same situation, but rather than continuing to reach for immortality, he heeds the words of his father and lets it go. This is a beautiful note to end the trilogy on, as a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. In fact, what gives life such importance and beauty is the fact that it doesn't last. Here, Indiana Jones makes the choice to let go of temptation and avoids falling into the great unknown mystery one last time. All in all, the Indiana Jones trilogy, visually and on paper, are awe-inspiring voyages in search of the mystic and unknown. But thematically, the films serve as a beautiful analogy to life, and this is a huge reason why these films have remained so timeless. As life will always remain the ultimate adventure, and much like in The Last Crusade, it's all just a leap of faith. Thank you for watching this breakdown of the Indiana Jones trilogy. If you enjoyed it and are interested in further explorations of screen stories, please feel free to drop a like and subscribe.